Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Building the Republic Part 2. My name is Jennifer Blank, and I'm going to be your guide on this journey. There are a couple of key ideas that we're going to talk about, well, more than a couple, while we go through this presentation. The first is the Transportation Revolution, then the Market Revolution, the Missouri Compromise, McCulloch v. Maryland, Gibbons v. Ogden, and then we're going to talk about this really important concept called manifest destiny. We kind of start this idea a little bit during this period, but it's going to have great significance as we go forward. It's going to help to be a big cause of the Civil War, and it's going to be very important throughout the rest of this course. So hold on to your hats, and here we go. Okay, so the Transportation Revolution was like, whoa, like wow, important. A majorly big deal. So over here, you see my little pointer. We're going to talk about three key things that were super huge in the Transportation Revolution. All right, the first one is the steamboat. The second one is the National Road, and it was under construction from 1811 to 1834. And the Erie Canal, which was under construction from 1808 to 1825. Now, you might be wondering why I don't have dates for the steamboat. Well, let me show you some little pictures I got going on here because that might illuminate that. So we're going to start with this one. And this is a picture of a steamboat, John Fitch's steamboat specifically, and according to this graphic, it was the first steam vehicle employed in the business of transportation. It made trial trips in 1788 and regular trips between Trenton and Philadelphia in 1790. So you might think the date was, say, I don't know, 1790 or even 1788, right? It's right around that time frame. So late 1700s. But I have a little surprise, little head game for you. So now let's take a look at this other graphic that is going to give us some slightly different information. And here we see a picture of Robert Fulton's Clermont, the first steamboat in 1810. Oh, so what do we do? This is crazy, right? So we've got two different dates, two different sources. How do we figure this out? Well, I did some researching and I went online and I found this really cool PDF article from the U.S. Army about the steamboat revolution and steamboat transportation. And John Finch, while he was the first guy to actually create a steamboat, it was very inefficient. It wasn't very fast and it cost a lot of money to make and to use. But by 1810, Robert Fulton had figured out how to make it efficient and cheap. So that's why he's known as the steamboat guy. So if you look up the steamboat, you're going to find all kinds of stuff about Robert Fulton. And that's why. Because he's the one who made it cheap and made it efficient and made it work really well so it was actually useful. All right, so hopefully that illuminates the mystery. Now, as far as the National Road goes, that was super important. Let me highlight this other little graphic here so you can see kind of where it went. So this is really important because it connected one area of the U.S. territory to the other. And it went all the way through, as you can see, through Illinois all the way over here. The National Road will continue to be expanded as we move forward in history, but for our purposes, this is what we need to know about. So it connected all of these states. That's a huge deal in the 1800s because they don't have a lot of stuff like we have. There's no cars, there's no planes, there's nothing like that. So that was really important that we had this main road that connected all these states. This allowed us to increase our trade and increase our commerce and allowed the national economy to grow. So that's super important. So let me shrink that one back down. Now, let's talk about rates of travel. I have a couple of other cool graphics here that are super interesting. So in 1800, let me show you this guy. This shows you the rates of travel in 1800. So you see all of these little lines here that tell you, okay, so to start here, to get all the way here, it'll take you 2 weeks. If you start all the way over here, then come all the way down, it'll take you 3 weeks, right? So just to give you a sense of how long it took to travel in 1800. This is how long it took you to get from one place to another. And if you really wanted one heck of a trip, you could do the 6-weeker over here because you had to cross over some major waterways. So that's what it looked like in 1800. Let me show you what it looked like by 1830. And you're going to see some super changes, super big changes. So let me make, whoops, there we go, make this one a little bit bigger. So now you see, look at this difference over here. Now we're at 2 weeks. This took 5 weeks before, and now it takes 2. So with the increases in transportation and the changes in technology and the advances in technology, we were able to cut our trips by significant amounts of time. That's something that's really important to remember. That's going to fundamentally change how our economy works. Which brings us to our next topic, the market revolution. The next major revolution we're going to talk about is the market revolution. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide because I covered this in another presentation, but some key big ideas I want you to keep in mind. The fact that we switched economic systems. We went from mercantilism to capitalism, and this change really allowed our economy to grow exponentially. And then there's the issue of the national bank, which I'm going to explore a little bit more on the next slide when I talk about McCulloch v. Maryland. Now, and then there's the development of new industries as part of the industrial revolution. So those are 3 key reasons why this period is known as the market revolution. Now below you see a couple of different graphs, one graph, one chart. On the left-hand side you see this relative share of world manufacturing output between 1750 and 1900. This basically lets you know how much we were producing compared to the rest of the world, right? And since the United States is still developing as an economy, this is a unique time to take a look at this data. So I'm going to make this chart a little bit bigger just so we can see it clearly. So, all right. You see here that there's this blue line going down there, and that represents the United States, this dark blue, okay? You see there, this is dark blue is the United States. So we're pretty flat from 1750 to 1800, but right around 1800 we start to pick up steam a little bit. And then again in about 1820 we pick up some more steam, and then by the time we hit 1830 we're really growing exponentially, and you see all this blue right there is all filled up. So we have a pretty significant share of manufacturing output. So that's really important, and that all happens during this period. So let me shrink that guy back down, and then let's take a look at this chart on the right-hand side here. So that way you can get a sense of why this was such a revolution. So a couple of reasons. We not only found new ways to generate power, so new sources of energy, which is very important. We also found new and more efficient ways to make textiles, to make clothes, to make cloth. Then there's this crazy word called metallurgy, and that's basically the mass production of steel. That helped us build better and bigger ships, rails, helped us with construction, and also make new machines that in turn helped us be more productive. Then, of course, like we've been talking about all this transportation madness, but not just transportation, telecommunications too. Our abilities to communicate with each other really improved a lot, and that's also very important. All right, so now on to Supreme Court cases. There are 2 particularly important cases that I want to stand out in your mind. First one is McCulloch v. Maryland. That one's really, really important, and that dealt with the National Bank. That was in 1819. We'll talk more about that in a second. The second one was Gibbons v. Ogden, and that was in 1824. We're going to talk about both of these super quickly. Let me show you a couple of graphics that I found. This one cartoon I'm going to show you was actually created by this AP Gov teacher right down here. That's my source for that particular cartoon, and it's super cute. Let me show you what it's all about, and I think you'll appreciate it. So let me just make this bigger. So the judge guy over here, over on the left, is saying establishing a national bank was necessary to carry out Congress's power to tax. Exactly. That's why we want it stopped, says Maryland. That's a nice little funny summary of what was going on in McCulloch v. Maryland, because basically the issue was whether or not a state could tax the national bank. The federal government created this national bank and put a branch in Maryland. Well, Maryland was like, listen, money would be super cool, so why don't we tax that bank and then we can make some cash? So the federal government said, I don't think so, because states don't get to tax the federal government. We should get to tax you. This is not okay. You don't get to tax us. So they went to court, and this was still John Marshall now. John Marshall, the Federalist. So he says, listen, Maryland, sorry, you're out of luck. You don't get to tax the national bank. So he shut him down. There's another little funny cartoon that I found online as well. This one was posted by Anonymous. But basically, this is the breakdown of what happened. So we have the facts of the case. Bank cashier and Maryland are right there. I need to tax those notes, buddy. And then the constitutional issue is, I can incorporate your bank by the Constitution. And then he says, you can't tax my post. That's unconstitutional. And the ruling was that Congress does have the power under the Constitution to incorporate a national bank because of the necessary and proper clause. But the state does not have the power to tax created by Congress when Congress follows the Constitution. So there's the ruling. There you go. We shrink that. And now let's talk about Gibbons v. Ogden. There's another cool little graphic I found, and the source for that graphic is down below. And we're going to look at that graphic first to give you a sense of what's going on in Gibbons v. Ogden. Okay, let me make this guy bigger. All right, so as we can see, it's in 1824. So New York gave this guy Ogden a monopoly so that he could operate on the New York and New Jersey waters. He was the only guy who could use his boats and do his thing on the water. So we're thinking that's not cool, man, because now nobody else can compete. So how is that good for the economy? So Gibbons was working in the same area but had a federal license. So which one has more power? Does the New York monopoly given to Ogden take precedence, or does the license that Gibbons had from the national government, is that one take precedence? So this is the debate that they had. So Ogden took Gibbons to court, and then Gibbons appealed to the Supreme Court. Chief Justice Marshall, again, John Marshall, a Federalist, said the Constitution gave the federal government the power to regulate interstate commerce. So because this involved both New York and New Jersey waters, this is interstate, between states. Therefore, the federal government has the power to regulate these licenses. So over here in the corner, you see this case made sure that the states couldn't give people the power to control business. The case impacted the entire U.S., and we still care about it because as a state, we can only control the businesses of our state, not other states. So the constitutional issue was whether or not states could regulate interstate commerce. This issue was settled by John Marshall when he said that no, states can't do that. It's the federal government's job. So that's, in a nutshell, what Gibbons v. Ogden is all about. Then here's another cool little cartoon that I thought would be fun for you guys to check out. Get out. New York gave me the exclusive rights to operate steamships in New York waters. Wrong. New York gave the United States the exclusive right to regulate interstate commerce when they ratified the Constitution. So, sorry, dude, you're out of luck, and that's not going to happen for you, Ogden. Gibbons wins that battle. Welcome to Manifest Destiny. Manifest Destiny is a huge, huge deal, but we're just going to touch on it briefly here because it's going to become more important later on in our content. So here we go. It's based on 3 key ideas that we really want to keep in mind, okay? 3 key ideas. We wanted to spread the U.S. system of government and also our culture westward because now we were getting all this new territory, so it was really important that we do that. Most importantly, God himself wanted us to do this. It was our destiny, our fate, to expand westward and do this great thing that God wanted us to do. This was the mentality. And then, of course, not to be impractical, we just basically need more land. We got more people coming in, and we need just places to put them, very simply. So I want you to keep this in mind, these 3 key ideas, because they're going to be very important as we move forward. Speaking of moving westward, we certainly have to talk about this thing called the Missouri Compromise. This was super, super important. It happened in 1820, and basically, Maine wanted to become a state, and it wanted to come in as a free state, because remember, up until this point, it's still part of Massachusetts. So it wants to come in as a free state. And the southern states say, hey, wait a second. Hold it right there. You're going to totally upset the balance between slave and free states. We don't like this very much because you might threaten our economic system of slavery. So we are not down for this. So we've got to do something about this. So in walks Henry Clay, this master negotiator who's going to be pretty much single-handedly responsible for keeping us out of civil war for the next 30 years. Now, so he negotiates this treaty, this compromise where, all right, Maine's going to come in as a free state, but you know what? Missouri is going to come in as a slave state. So we still have the exact number of free and slave states. The balance is maintained. And then we also made this agreement that everything north of this line you see here, everything north with the exception of a couple of states would be free states only. Okay, if you see this map down over here, and then everything below that line would be complete slave territory. The orange areas of this map over here would remain closed to slavery. Okay, so this kind of calmed things down for a while, but this is where you see the sectionalism battles start to heat up, and I've talked about sectionalism before, the battle between states' rights and federal authority, so it's really important that we remember that. The Missouri Compromise is super important because it kept us out of civil war. So So what did we learn? Well, we learned about this cool thing called the transportation revolution, which allowed us to get from place to place a lot faster and also to communicate with each other much better. Then we learned about the market revolution, where our economic system fundamentally changed and we were able to be more efficient and produce more stuff. Then we learned about this thing called the Missouri Compromise, which maintained the balance between slave and free states, happened in 1820, kept us out of Civil War. Then we learned about these really cool Supreme Court cases, McCulloch v. Maryland in 1819, which dealt with an issue of the National Bank, and then Gibbons v. Ogden in 1824, which dealt with the issue of interstate commerce. We also learned about this really cool idea called Manifest Destiny, which involved us moving westward. So I hope you guys learned a lot, and I'll see you next time.